Pod. Welcome back to another episode of Say Who Say Pod. He's Danny O'Neil, not in a sports code. I'm Christian Caple. We're past the midway point of August, Danny. Washington had its first scrimmage of training camp on Saturday, and when they awoke this morning, they were officially the number 17 ranked team in the country, according to the preseason AP Top 25 poll, which, by the way, the polls, the preseason polls, get a lot of hate nowadays. A lot of people think we should do away with them, and all it does is give people false preconceptions about what a team is, and it affects playoff seeding, and maybe all that's true. But I've come around on the idea that who cares? It's fun. We like to rank teams, right?
It does not matter now. There was a time where I actually thought it was a problem, but that was really 1990s when it could be your ranking could impact where you ended up playing. Not so much if you went undefeated, but if you were from a bigger conference and were a 2-loss team or a 1-loss team, you would need to, it helped to be ranked high early as opposed to being a team that was unranked at the beginning of the year with 1 loss. It would be harder to get into the top tier bowl games, but we're way past that now.
Yeah, I think there's some argument that the early CFP selection rankings might mirror the AP poll, or like even if subconsciously you're kind of working off of that as a framework or a starting point, and even in that sense, right, it biases you a little bit. So I didn't like totally discount that. There was a time I remember because Chris Peterson has long been a proponent of like, don't do rankings for like 4 weeks, right? Even then, I kind of agreed with him. I'm like, the preseason ranking does leave teams higher than they should be for longer.
Yeah.
The problem is voters just need to be more willing to make drastic changes after 1 week, right? And I know we've talked about this before, but I think from a Washington perspective, starting 17th is just fine. There will be opportunities for them to move up if that's the kind of team that they're going to be. They're not ranked somewhere where you'd worry about preseason bias leaking in, because the kind of teams they need to beat to rise up are ranked very high. So
the other thing is their schedule makes it such that if you're going to have, you'll be in contention. If Washington loses 2 games, I think they'll be in the college football playoffs. I think if they go through their schedule and suffer 2 losses, I think they'll be in. And I suppose if you started outside the top 25 entirely, that might be a little dicier, but really the way things are the way things work out now, you certainly have time and opportunity to outswim any sort of underestimation early in the year.
Preseason, regular season, or postseason, I've got Chuck Olson Kia and Shoreline number 1 in my Seattle area car dealership ranking. They have, after all, been locally owned and operated since 1964. They're family owned and operated by a family of University of Washington graduates. They have a friendly, low-pressure sales staff and a competitively priced selection of vehicles, and they have Henry Olson. So when you go check out Chuck Olson Kia in Shoreline, ask for our friend Henry, and when you talk to Henry, tell him that Say Who Say Pod sent you.
Would you describe Henry as more the quarterback? Is he a coordinator? If you're going to come up with your football equivalent of Henry.
That's a good question. I think he's like a player coach, frankly.
Okay.
He's a coordinator. He's out there playing quarterback. I think he's a goal line back on 4th and short inside the 2-yard line.
Coffee's for closers. Give the rock to Henry. Let's have him bring it through.
You need someone to sew it up. You stick that ball in Henry Olson's gut. Let him bowl across the goal line.
That's what they call Henry over at Chuck Olson Kia. And bring in the Iceman.
This episode of Say Who Say Pod also brought to you by our friends at Husky Mobile. Husky Mobile is partnered directly with the University of Washington to offer affordable phone plans for the Husky community with up to 7% of each bill going back to UW Athletics. Subscribers can also enjoy game day perks like fast pass lanes, seat upgrades, and giveaways, all while on T-Mobile's nationwide 5G network. Use code ONMontlake at checkout to get your first month free when transferring your number. You can do that at gohuskymobile.com. huskymobile.com. Thanks again to Husky Mobile for supporting today's show. So last year, preseason for the Washington Huskies, you looked at that Wisconsin game and said, they'll be favored, but that's a tough trip. And of course, they do end up losing that one to go 8-4. You look at what the chalk would dictate just based on the AP Top 25, and it looks like 9-3 with obviously Oregon ranked number 2, Indiana ranked number 6, USC ranked 14th. So those three opponents ranked ahead of Washington. They are ranked higher than anyone else they play. Penn State and Iowa are also in the top 25. So they do have 5 preseason top 25 opponents this year. But beating everyone who the consensus preseason is you're better than them, and losing to the teams who the consensus preseason is that are better than you, would spit out 9-3 at the end of the year for what it's worth.
I would have, if you had said, hey, 9 wins or even 8.5 over under last year, I think I probably would have hoped for the over, but bet on the under. And I think that this year needs to be over. And 10 wins is very doable for this team, and it's not the expectation. And I'm not someone who is like, this is a season that's going to be a failure if they don't win 10 games. Too many different things can happen. 10 wins is a very achievable goal, where I would have said 10 wins is a real stretch last year. 10 wins, there would have to be some things happen that I did not foresee happening. They would either have to pull some games out. Damon Williams would have to be way more consistent than you have any right to expect. Second-year quarterback who's in his first full year as a starter. This year's different, and the schedule's tougher. Both of those things. The schedule is more difficult, and 10 wins is much more achievable this year.
The Huskies scrimmaged on Saturday, 125 or so plays across their 3 units. I was there. I saw it. I wrote about it. What stood out most to you?
Yeah. How did it look to you? I wanted to hear kind of bird's eye view. How did it look to you?
It's becoming pretty inescapable how much depth they have defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, I think we can all think of position, not just defensively, but positions in years past, like even on some decent teams, decent to good teams they've had, where if one guy goes down, the next guy in off the bench in a perfect world would not be playing, right? Like every roster's got its weaknesses. That's a glaring weakness. They haven't recruited that position well enough. Washington at its best shouldn't be starting so-and-so at such position, shouldn't be bringing so-and-so in as the first guy off the bench at such position. It almost feels like this year the opposite could be true, where there are perfectly functional Big Ten football players who are not going to play on this team. Not superstars and not even potential stars, right? Not guys who would start for every other team, but guys who you watch make plays in practice and think, oh, that guy's flashing today, who are not going to see the field, or if they do, it's going to be in a very minimal role. And that's more true at some positions than others. Like you start to think about, okay, where could they least afford to lose somebody? Who could most, kind of when we put together the 22 most important player list every year, who would most disrupt things if they went down? And I do think that even though linebacker is very deep, Jacob Manu is good enough above replacement, let's say, that losing him would be a loss. But you'd put someone very experienced and very talented in his place. I do wonder, like, if something were to happen to Alex McLaughlin, what does that down box safety position look like? Right now, it's Gavin Day taking the number 2 reps. He had a nice scrimmage, had a nice TFL, made an interception in the end zone, but that is a true freshman, right? And so, like, you look at the depth there, and it's like, well, like, you got some talent, not a ton of experience with it. Paul Mankey has been out for so far this spring with what looks like a minor or nagging something. He's been suited up and working out off to the side. I was curious to see if he might put the clamps on that number 2 kind of down safety role. We'll see what it looks like when he gets back. But boy, their secondary looks very deep across the board. I mean, you're talking about Jaron Jones looking like one of the best players defensively in camp through 8 practices. He had a great scrimmage, getting number 1 reps with Dylan Robinson sidelined. You know, I don't know that Dylan Robinson or Emmanuel Carnley can be moved off of that one line, but it sure looks like Jaron Jones is going to be the next guy up. And you've got Elias Johnson in the mix there, Elijah Durr, who has made some plays. Rashawn Clark is your nickel, but Ramons Adams had a really nice couple days at camp. And so you're looking at like 8 to 10 guys in the secondary who can really play. And obviously you're not going to play all of them, right? I mean, there's going to be a guy or two who, like you saw make plays in the spring and in camp, who aren't going to get on the field this year. So you're still looking for like that special difference-making talent at a few positions. I'm not saying this is like, you know, elite across the board, but the number of guys who they could put on the field and trust to do their job, I'm going to say is probably the highest we've seen since Chris Peterson was the head coach.
In my mind, the biggest either sort of spot you don't want to see an injury, but it's also who's going to emerge there is edge rusher. And you've got some guys, but Isaiah Ward's been banged up. You have a true freshman that has certainly earned a lot of attention. But, I mean, the fact that you're probably looking at one true freshman starting and another one factoring pretty heavy in the rotation on your defensive line. But you have players up there. I mean, and that was before Ty came back. They've got more depth up there. I think back to even the 2023 season. Defensive tackle, when Latuli Hasanoa got banged up, they felt it. And to the point where he kind of got pulled back into the Apple Cup, where I think ideally they would have liked to rest him, because it's exactly what you would say, that spot where, hey, the next guy down is a guy that ideally he's just not at the same tier as the other guys on this roster. And I do. It was credit to Jed Fish and his staff, the way they've rebuilt the roster, because they came into about as tough a situation as you can come in terms of personnel. And in year 3, they have not only a lot of frontline players and really talented guys starting with their quarterback, but they've got a lot more depth.
If you are looking for areas of concern, that's it, right? That like a number of these guys we're talking about providing depth, and in certain cases, not just depth, but, you know, perhaps starters reps. In certain cases, certainly starters reps, right? Derek Colin-Bruce is going to play a ton. Mm-hmm. Is Ramzak Fruin going to start? We'll see, but he's going to play a lot no matter what. Jaron Jones is, you know, clearly very talented, a very mature player, has very mature cover skills, I would say. But you know, you saw what it looked like with another freshman corner last year who was really good at times, held his own at times, but there were some growing pains too. So you know, if you've got that much youth, if you do end up relying on that much youth, especially all at once, like you're going to take your lumps here or there. That's just a reality. So as exciting as it might be that, like, yeah, does Ramzak Fruin bring something different at edge rusher that probably doesn't exist anywhere else on the roster? Like, I would say so. I would say the things he can do in the pass rush are not things that just anybody in that edge rusher room can do. But he is a freshman, and you know, the more freshmen you put on the field together, the more you're going to see some of those things pop up where you're like, ooh, that's not a mistake he'll make in 2 years.
I will sign up 10 times out of 10 for the young, talented player who makes mistakes, like the Dylan Robinson experience last year. I'll sign up for that 10 times out of 10 compared to a veteran with a lower ceiling. And it's possible that some of that is, I'm not saying that's the right formula for winning. But it's probably somewhat what I enjoy watching about a football team. But that question of, because you're right, growing pains, and the old model was very much, hey, you learn in the background and you get some of the young mistakes, or you develop experience and familiarity and consistency at practice and working your way up the depth chart. I am so much more, okay, you give me a couple back-breaking mistakes, but give me the guy with talent. Let him get out there, and you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs.
I think that's where like most of college football is now. I mean, certainly Jed Fish is, where experience matters, but it only matters in how talented it makes you, right? And if the freshman is more talented without the experience, you're not going to sit him just because he hasn't seen it.
The other part, too, is that the format changed. with a 12-team playoff, an early season loss, there's more room to learn on the job. And it's not like every team depends on the playoffs or every team is going to make the playoffs. It's a different 12 teams out of more than 100 teams. It's a different format than the NFL, where a little under half the league makes the playoffs. But that was one of the things. If you were going to win the conference or you were going to contend for a national championship, you couldn't lose it all. Like any misstep. And it's a little different now. It is there is a little more latitude for learning on the job. Plus, with the transfers, you have a lot of people who are, even if they're not freshmen or even if they're not inexperienced in college football, they are learning a new program or trying to learn a new defense or offense.
I think also if you're a Big Ten or SEC team, and this isn't true for every team, but maybe you don't have that marquee top 25 home and home on your non-conference schedule anymore. And so those first three games are, you got a little more flexibility as far as letting a guy play every snap who's never played before, or getting multiple guys into the game to get them experience. And, I think like UC Davis was valuable for them that way last year, right? Colorado State and Wazoo, the score wound up comfortable, but those weren't really like terribly comfortable games. Kind of weird just the way things played out. But, Desmond Roebuck's breakout was UC Davis last year. And you could say like, well, the opponent, the opponent renders it meaningless from this guy's going to be great in every game forever. We can project that based on the fact that he had a cool touchdown against UC Davis. It's not meaningless in terms of like that guy getting on the field and feeling it and having success, right? Like that stuff still matters.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny. I would be howling about Washington. Actually, I did howl when I thought Washington's non-conference schedule was like this back under Sark, where Sark kind of steered it this way. That is one of the things I am totally 100% at peace with in the Big Ten reality. You are not going to hear a peep out of me about the quality of non-conference scheduling anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they got 5 top 25 teams on the schedule.
Yes.
I was discussing this recently, and maybe we talked about it too, that the idea of like if the Apple Cup has to be a September non-conference game, like I think it's cooler for it to be week 1 than week 2 or week 3.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I strongly believe that, and again, not the case for everybody, but the season opener in college football has become quite anticlimactic, where you spend all off season really like looking forward to the year, and you only get those precious 12 opportunities to watch your favorite team play and on and on. And then the first game is, either it's a blowout and you did what you were supposed to do, or you lost and it's the worst thing ever and the season's over, So it feels odd sometimes for there to be all this buildup for like your average Big Ten team or SEC team, and then the first game is someone you're favored to beat by 4 or 5 touchdowns. So I like if you can inject some rivalry juice into that, something to make it interesting. The fact that it's on a Sunday and on NBC and exclusive window and all that, I think only adds to it. So it's weird and it's non-traditional, but at least it's something in week 1 that's like, oh, hey, this is, it's not going to be a 10,000 empty seat, wake me when it's over type of game.
I've chopped up some of the Jed Fish sound from after the scrimmage, which was posted on Montlake. I watched it on YouTube, also available on the newsletter that was sent out after the scrimmage. Before we get there, this will be my one question, because I feel I have questions about running back, but I feel like my questions about running back might be because I'm not seeing the practices or close to the coaches to know how they feel about it. Because from the outside, that looks like a position where, with Jordan Washington not practicing and really no indication that there's any timeline for him to become available at any point, there's not very much experience back there. You've got a transfer, you've got Quade Carr, you've got Brian Bonner, who's a pretty well-regarded recruit, but is someone that's probably not physically expected to carry a ton of the load. Is running back a glaring need on this team?
Yeah, I don't know how glaring it is. I guess the way you frame that is right. Like covering the team and knowing kind of how coaches feel about it. I feel like it's been clear enough since spring that they see Quade Carr as the guy on this 2026 team who's got the highest ceiling right now, that I've just kind of had him mentally penciled in as the number one guy. And, that number one moniker doesn't mean what it meant for Jonah Coleman.
No.
And even Jonah Coleman, it's not like they were force feeding Jonah Coleman. He wasn't carrying 25 times a game, right?
Muhammad got a lot of opportunities.
So I think you're talking about a by committee approach. And the question is that committee 3 guys or 2 guys? Because I kind of feel like there's not going to be a ton of opportunities for guys who are not Quade Carr or Jaden Lamar. And then we'll see how it's divided between those two. Jaden Lamar looked good on Saturday. Made a couple nice cuts. He had their 2 longest rushes from scrimmage. The Quade Carr got loose a couple times too. He runs in traffic probably better than I would have anticipated. His reputation is that he's, a quick speed guy. He was a track guy in high school. The roster's got him at 198, I want to say. So they like that he's gotten bigger. Again, I see a guy that they're ever going to plan to hand the ball to 20 times in a game. I don't know. I don't know that you have that one guy on this roster. I don't know that that's a problem. I think they're really confident in their offensive line. And I think they have a quarterback who can run the ball a little bit too.
That's true too. That's a good point.
You think back to the Rutgers game last year and, why was Damon Williams Jr. able to get loose against them aside from the fact that Rutgers had one of the very worst defenses in all of FBS? That was a factor too. But they were pretty obviously keyed on Jonah Coleman. And so, you don't have that one guy in the backfield to command all that attention this year necessarily. We'll see what it looks like after the first couple of weeks and how their future opponents might adjust based on their performance. But, I think you factor in what you can design for Damon Williams Jr. with their confidence in Quade Carr and the experience, at least, of Jaden Lamar. He's never been one I don't think he's had double-digit carries in a game, or maybe he has just once or twice. So he's not someone who's ever, really been asked to carry the load either. So I think it's kind of TBD on that front. I do think if those 2 guys are healthy and everything, they feel like that probably fills out the core of their running game. And then, hey, can Trey Cooley add something here or there? We haven't seen a ton of him so far. They like the way Brian Bonner is progressing, but yeah, I mean, is he going to be ready to be in a position to be a regular part of the rotation this year? I'm not quite sure. So it's when you had Jonah Coleman for 2 years and you felt like you had the heir apparent on your roster during the same period of time, and now you don't have either of those guys. But I don't know that they're down on their running backs either.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the things I know that I'm most excited to watch how it plays out, because I do get that feeling, and some of it's from talking to you, that they're pretty comfortable. The coaches are pretty comfortable with what they have at running back, and there's of all the different questions I have about this team, this program, the offense and sort of the way the offense runs is not high up there. And speaking of that, here was after the scrimmage, Jed Fish, I think we might have to listen between the lines a little bit, but it sounds like there is a lot. He is very happy with what he's seeing from his wide receivers. Here he is talking, and this was specifically a question about Chris Lawson.
Chris is getting better and better. It's really making the competition at receiver is really becoming better than it's ever been also, because you've got Chris, then you've got Dez, you got Rashid playing at a high level, and Christian, then you got Trez, and then Mason made some plays. Mason had a nice little catch down there and a couple other plays. So you got guys that are constantly working, and we got to get Jordan Clay back. Jordan Clay should be back for Tuesday's practice. So he's got to step up, and he's got to go compete and make it hard. But I love the way Lawson's playing. And the thing about Chris is he can play all 3 spots. So Chris's flexibility at Z, at X, and at F for us is a big difference maker.
Now, that's a lot of names, Christian. And it's training camp. We like to get everybody. Jed Fish's offense has never really specialized in the the number of different guys who catch. Like the ball tends to go to a few guys in his offense. What do you take out of his answer there?
I was just talking about this with somebody just before the scrimmage about how every year through injury or guys enrolling early and guys enrolling later, like you end up getting a good look in spring and training camp at a number of guys who take a lot of reps at receiver and think, oh, like, I'm thinking of an Audric Harris or, Chris Lawson last year also, at least in the spring, who are kind of percolating and will appear on the field in every game. But you just know, like, when you start to do the math, it's like, well, but if everyone's healthy, like, this is like the number 5 guy.
Mm-hmm.
And this program doesn't really go 5 deep at receiver. It does in the sense that, like, that guy will get on the field at some point, but, like, your number 5 guy is not ending the season with a ton of targets. Even number 4 might not necessarily, unless last year, a little bit differently. Desmond Roebuck was that number 4 guy to start the year. Rashid Williams gets hurt, he becomes a starter. So obviously, like, you need that depth and more because guys are going to get hurt, and you're going to have a number 4, number 5, number 6 receiver who's going to end up playing starting snaps at some point. But yeah, Jed Fish talks about it more in the sense of like, hey, is somebody going to force us to play 5 guys?
Yep.
Is someone going to be so good that, gosh, you got your starting 3, and I don't really want to take any of these guys off the field to begin with. If we do, this guy's number 4, but man, Chris Lawson just won't stop making plays. Trez Davis won't stop making plays. So I think that's kind of what they're looking for with the way they've talked about Christian Moss, with the way Christian Moss has performed through the first 9 practices now. Big couple weeks for Jordan Clay to prove that he should get some of those snaps as well. That X receiver in particular, but that is just not a guy that comes off the field. So, I don't think you're taking Desmond Roebuck off the field. And Rashid Williams certainly is positioned to be a guy who's not going to be standing on the sideline a whole lot either. So, yeah, can Jordan Clay sort of build on what he had done in spring before he got hurt? And then I think he also had a couple pretty nice catches in the spring game, if I remember right. Not that really matters as much. And then, can Chris Lawson keep, he had a nice catch downfield from Keeney McMillan. I think he had their 2 longest gains of the scrimmage in the passing game. He stepped in at slot behind Desmond Roebuck with the number 1 offense. So his versatility, I think, is going to help him out there. And, hey, with Jordan Clay being limited and Chris Lawson performing the way that he has, would Chris Lawson be in contention to be the first guy off the sideline at X receiver? Should they need a second guy there? Is that backup job even assured for Jordan Clay? So be an interesting couple weeks here to see how that shakes out. We talked about with this offense, you got to replace Jonah Coleman, you got to replace Denzel Boston. Those are 2 huge names who are playing in the NFL now, but at receiver 1 through 6, could they on average overall be better? Could they feel more comfortable going deeper into the well than ever before? I think that's possible, but it's health dependent. It depends what we see from Jordan Clay. It depends how Chris Lawson can kind of close out training camp here.
Before the season starts, I'm just planting this seed. We'll get back to it. Before the season starts, we need to make a projection on Desmond Roebuck receptions. And more specifically, is there a shot he sets the school's single season reception record?
Ooh, do you know what it is?
It is. It's 94. It's by Reggie Williams. Reggie's got 2 of the 3 highest single season tallies. It's Reggie Williams 94, Rome Odunze 92 from 2023, and then Reggie had 89 in 2003.
Okay. So Rome's a little skewed because they played 15 games. Mm-hmm. If we average it out over 13 games, that's 7.2 catches a game, roughly. That'd be, Big Ten football. That'd be tough to do. I wouldn't be shocked. Like, Damon Williams Jr.'s comfort level with him is off the charts.
And he's in the slot.
Yep. And who's their best route runner? Desmond Roebuck. Yeah. Who's the guy who best finds a way to get open? Desmond Roebuck. Who's their best ball skill, contested catch guy. In the slot, I think it'd be Desmond Roebuck. If he lined him up at X receiver and he's facing press coverage against every Big Ten opponent's number one corner, is he winning contested balls as much? You probably want someone bigger in that role, obviously. But I think the level of trust that the coaching staff and DeMond Williams Jr. has in Desmond Roebuck is about as high as it can be. So, would not be surprised to see him look to him quite often.
We're going to pivot to the defensive backfield now. We're going to start off with Jedd Fisch, and this is it was kind of an unsolicited compliment that he ended up throwing to his safeties in Dillard Allen and Alex McLaughlin.
I think that RDA and Alex are two of the best that I've been around, and the last three safeties we had at the last spot are all drafted and playing in the NFL right now. So really proud of the way those two guys are playing, and see what it looks like when we watch the tape.
Two of those safeties that Jed was referencing from Arizona, Tradan Stukes, who was a second-round pick. I believe he might have been Jed's first recruiting class, maybe, if not the second. He was a second-round pick by the Raiders. He's a rookie this year. And then Genesis Smith, who was a fourth-round pick by the Chargers. And Smith played just one season as a true freshman in Jed's final year in Arizona, and then both those players stayed put after Jed came to Washington. Safety is strength of this team?
Absolutely. I mean, the top, especially that top line, and you talk about Tradan Stukes. Give Tradan Stukes credit. He was class of 2020 with Arizona, so he comes in pandemic, goes 0-5 with Kevin Sumlin, loses 70-7 to Arizona State. Sticks with the program, goes 1-11 under Jedd Fisch in year one.
I didn't even
sticks around, is there for the rise, is there for the rebuild. Jedd Fisch leaves and he stays at Arizona. Finishes up, ends up playing 6 years there and becomes a second-round draft pick.
Good for him.
That's a lot. That's some adversity, man.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Go through a Sumlin season, and then, because that first year was that was a tough road to hoe for everybody down there.
Like I said, the depth, I think, is talented. I think you watch Raheem Wright play and you watch Gavin Day play, and you think, okay, Raheem Wright's a great athlete. He's a guy who's, this spring was his first healthy practice in a long time. He battled some injuries. He looks good. Taylor Mays talks about Gavin Day needing to find that sort of consistency. It is maybe not the most reassuring thing that the first two safeties after Alex McLaughlin or Rylan Dillard Allen basically haven't played college football. So, that's the back line of your defense. If there's ever a spot where you most kind of want some veteran presence, it's there. I think that's why they were hoping CJ Christian could recover from last year's injury and be a factor this year. Unfortunately, he tore his Achilles in the spring. So again, we have to see once Paul Mankey Jr. gets healthy, how does he factor in there? If something crazy did happen, would they be more comfortable maybe moving Rashawn Clark back from nickel? I think the guys who play nickel in this defense, or who nickel is their primary position, they kind of consider them safeties anyway, at least sort of sort them into that bucket. I guess Ramon Adams and Jaron Jones come more from the cornerback family, but it's as good of a starting five as they've had since at least 2021. I don't want to discount that year because you had two legit NFL corners out there. I think Boogie Radley-Hiles was a decent player at nickel also. Alex Cook was playing safety. He became a second-team All-Pac-12 guy the next year. That was not a fun year for anyone to remember. It was still a pretty good secondary. But 1 through 5, it looks a little Chris Peterson-ish, When you guys see Dylan Robinson do it, we haven't seen him this camp. He's been, it must not be serious because he's suited up every practice, but he's not participating. But Emmanuel Carnley looks pretty good. Rashawn Clark looks like he's going to be pretty good. And then there's competition behind those guys, right? There's younger guys pushing too. So it is a blend of, a lot of the talent is very young. A lot of the talent has not played much college football. that makes you a little nervous if you end up having to rely on multiple of those guys. But yeah, I mean, with the way that McLaughlin and Rylan Dillard-Allen are playing, and just sort of the as good of tacklers as those guys are, and they're very different players, and so I think they fit the two different safety spots in Ryan Walters' defense very well, and they complement each other well. They were very impressive on Saturday night.
Well, here is Jed talking about Dillard-Allen specifically, and did he get into a dust-up? I know that he had a big stop at the goal line late. Was there? It sounded like there was a separate little dust-up that he had.
There was a skirmish you might call it, early in I think it was a screen to Desmond Roebuck.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that it was between RDA and Roebuck. I think it was like Rasheed Williams was trying to block, and him and RDA got locked up. But there were a couple offensive guys, a couple defensive guys. There was some pushing and shoving, and there may have been a swing taken at one point that had Taylor Mays chatting with Rylan Dillard-Allen for some time on the sideline.
All right, here's Jed talking about that.
I was giving some thought to this. RDA reminds me so much of Jacob Manu as a freshman. And, I feel like it's my responsibility to really invest in RDA as the person. I love Jacob Manu. I love, Jaden DeLaura, who I invested, who had, those tendencies that they got so competitive and they got on such edge. So I got to get RDA in that same world. I got to spend more time with him and help him understand the difference of playing at the highest level possible, but not crossing the line. And I feel really good that we can get that done, because he is an exceptional player. And he played all of last year, and we didn't cross the line. So I don't think we'll cross the line this year. I just think he's getting bigger, stronger, faster, and better. But we got to control him.
I am all for the Surly safety. I am all for the Surly safety.
Yeah. Can you have a really good defense without a couple guys who get kicked out of practice from time to time?
No. I would be concerned if you had a defense who never, ever frustrates or angers or promotes a fight from the offensive players.
Jed kind of alluded to, it wasn't a problem in games last year. And, I don't know that the issue is so much that, he's going to hit an opponent late. He's going to hurt the team by drawing a penalty. I'm not saying he won't. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. The issue is hey, don't do things in practice that might accidentally injure your teammates.
That's a very fair consideration.
Which by the way, this coaching staff, and it's filtered down to the players too, because if the conversation ever turns to whoa, what does it mean to be a pro? Or what does professional conduct look? I've never heard a staff talk more about being a pro means knowing when to stop in practice. It means not getting too close to the quarterback. It means not taking guys to the ground when it's thud tempo. It means, when I was talking to Jed Fish at Media Day, and he was talking about some of the NFL visits they'd made, and that they went over to the Seahawks, and he's developed a friendship with Mike McDonald, and they say, that's obviously a reigning Super Bowl champion, anything you take away there. And he basically said, they know who they are and what they want to be about. Two, they do a great job, taking care of the team in practice. They do a great job, which if you've watched Hard Knocks, maybe that's hasn't always been the case this training camp. But
Mike's gotten after dudes who get too close to the quarterback. He broke Derek Hall off something because he did not like how close he got to the quarterback.
Turns out I'm the one running the practice.
That was a pretty good line. That was a pretty good line. Too bad. Turns out I'm the one running the practice.
So we saw Rylan Dillard-Allen get sent off on Thursday, and was very, very, very frustrated, very upset. My understanding is, I think a message needed to be sent along those lines to the entire defense that day. I think this has been a very physical camp. He's he's not alone in that sort of pushing the envelope, needing to find the line sort of thing. So, I wonder if there was a little bit of hey, let's we got to rein all these guys in a little bit.
And he's the one that gets to take the bullet for everybody.
Yeah.
Nate McMillan, when I covered the Sonics, used to talk about this, is that there would be challenges with Dale Ellis on defense, and Bernie Bickerstaff would never say a word to Dale Ellis about that, but he would curse Nate McMillan up and down. Because somebody just needs to take it in the interim. So sometimes that happens too, of like you just get to be the one that, as a leader or as someone who can take that criticism, you're the one that gets kind of singled out. I've covered teams that have at times hurt themselves through some of it and been around like where people could legitimately say they need to reel it back a little bit. And I've always felt that the benefits you get from playing that way outweigh sort of the tough guy football persona of like, you can't have people doing that sort of thing. It is good to take care of your teammates at practice. It is really stupid to be overly physical in practice. And when it comes to games, I always try not to be someone who is like, oh my God, you can't take that penalty. Because you're like, well, I mean, sometimes it'll happen. If you've got a team that pushes to the edge, like sometimes you're going to take that. Really good defenses do tend to get penalized. And I'm okay with the trade-off. I'm not going to trip over pennies.
Do you find it amusing that the guy, besides Ryan Walters, the guy who is taking Rylan Dillard-Allen aside to
Taylor Mays?
Explain to him the importance of finding the line is Taylor Mays?
I mean, Taylor's really good in the sense that if you want to look at, there are not many safeties who have ever been as big and as fast as Taylor Mays was. Like I know his pro career didn't turn out like a lot of people thought. And if he comes out after his junior season, it's very possible he is a top 10 pick. It's too bad. I wish we got to see him I wish we got to see him in the Seahawks defense, being fully honest. Like see him in that Cam Chancellor type role. But I do think that Taylor Mays, he's the perfect person to be doing that because Taylor was a legitimately intimidating safety. And how do you maintain that without being reckless? How do you know the moments where it does, you do want to set a tone? And for this defense, I do think their middle linebackers and their safeties are going to be tone setters for them. Yeah, I mean, Taylor was so freaking big. He was a menace, and he was fast enough to play single high. God, he was just a hammer back there.
The Manu comparison is interesting from Jedd Fisch. I mean, they obviously expect him to be a great player, was a great player for them in Arizona. They clearly think the world of him off the field also. And so when I see Rylan Dillard-Allen get as frustrated as he was and as upset, this is not a guy who believes he's being reckless or intends to be reckless with his teammates. It's a guy who's very aggressive and trying, finding the line, does not seem to have found it yet, but I think is working through what it looks like to practice properly and is not necessarily trying to cause problems.
Yeah. Well, on the other safety, Jedd Fisch was asked about Alex McLaughlin and the possibility that he might be part of the pass rush at different points.
He's really bright, so he has a really good feel for when to come, when not, how to read it, what track to take, how to time it out right. And the position he plays permits us to use him in every really disguise it, drop, play the linebacker position, play the safety position, be a blitzer. And certain guys have a great feel for blitzing, and he's done a great job with that.
Is Alex going to be kind of their X factor?
He could be. I mean, he was in the backfield a lot on Saturday. He chased DeMond Williams out of the pocket at one point, forced a throwaway. He had a couple, they're not actually sacks because the quarterbacks are not live, but had a couple touch sacks, plays that were ruled sacks that probably would have been. I'd have to go back and look. I feel like last camp, we all had kind of the same thought that oh yeah, like this is a guy, and what did he have? 5.5 sacks or something his sophomore year in Northern Arizona. Like played a ton at the line of scrimmage and in the backfield. I kind of felt like they would use him as a blitzer more last year. And then just as we think about this season, like I don't know that we saw that a ton. At least just off the top of my head, don't recall seeing it like a whole lot. But it does seem like it's very much part of the package, and they were being pretty liberal with it on Saturday. So yeah, I mean, as you're trying to generate more pass rush, right? That was not a strength for them last year. And I think they got a couple of guys in that edge rusher room who were interesting and who could improve it. But you don't really have like a proven difference maker there yet, where you're like, okay, this is cleaned up. It'll be better, period. Because of this guy or this guy. It's one more way to get pressure on the quarterback. It's one more thing for the quarterback to have to think about and account for before every play. And he's also just a very good tackler, right? I mean, he finishes tackles. Like
he does.
He's got a shot to get someone on the ground. It's pretty rare for him to get out of it.
It's for all the time we spend talking about either schemes or players, physical attributes, their speed, their size. Like tackling is in some cases an underappreciated or underemphasized. Like having a really sure tackler, especially a guy who's a safety, and it's a foundation. It's a building block of the game, and he's as good a tackler as I think you see in college football.
Care to guess who their two highest graded tacklers were last year by PFF?
I'll say Alex McLaughlin.
He's number one.
Exree Alexander?
No, he was 11th, really more like 9th or 8th if we filter out guys who
is it
really
Manu
didn't play that much. What's that?
Is it Manu? Jacob Manu?
Or it was not Manu.
Is it total tackles? Or just
I'm just the highest grade from
the grade
PFF.
On their tackling. Is it Dillard Allen and McLaughlin then?
Dillard Allen was second.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then Vince Holmes was right behind Dillard Allen. So, okay, that's where it gets weird. Well, like he only played 100 snaps and small sample size and such. But yeah, I mean, PFF thought that the two best tacklers on their team last year are the two guys who are going to start at safety for them this season. So, they are up the middle, I think, as you would want them to be.
I saw that Rainey Saleh is still not playing, but I think you asked Jed about him after the scrimmage, and it sounds like he's pretty close to being back on the field.
Yeah, and I wish I'd asked about Dylan Robinson and Isaiah Ward too. So Rainey Saleh came off 2 or 3 practices ago and hasn't participated since. He was suited up and he did some I think kind of light stretching at the start, but him and Jacob Manu didn't participate either, but I think they're kind of just not in the Pete Carroll sense, but kind of taking care of him right now. Just keeping him fresh. And I think he'd been limited for a couple of practices early in camp, and it was nothing. Also fully suited up. But yeah, Rainey Saleh didn't. I think Elenius Davis had come off the day before and suited up. I also don't think took any reps. Dylan Robinson hasn't done any 11-on-11 yet. Devin Hyde just got back. Russell Davis looks explosive. That's another guy. So I kind of feel like, what you have in Jacob Lane.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of your stalwart. He's got one spot locked up. That trio of Isaiah Ward, Ramzak Fruin, and Russell Davis, I will be very interested to see the division of reps there, because I think all three of those guys have something to give. They all have to play. I don't. Can you get two of them on the field together in situations where you do take Lane off the field? You probably have a bigger body like Logan George or Devin Hyde on that side, but I think Russell Davis has looked the way you would hope he would look, coming off of a year where he didn't get to play at all and basically hadn't practiced with the team since November of 2024. He chased down Brian Bonner for a TFL that was kind of a wow play. He forced a hold on a pressure that would have been a sack otherwise. I think he had a sack. And I believe that was all against the number 2 offensive line. He's taken 1 reps here or there. I don't know that I saw him in there on Saturday. But he's looking like someone who's going to play, going to be part of the rotation. That's the thing. I mean, you're kind of uncertain about that position, but you're now looking at like 7 guys who have all sort of done something this camp where you're like, they could go pretty deep just in terms of guys, again, like guys you trust to put on the field and go do it if they got to go out there.
Yeah, that's certainly a much different situation than in the past couple of years where you've been, this guy's got to be able to fill this spot. And if he's not able to, I'm not sure what their next tier. Whereas here, there are some spots where you don't have proven experience or proven production, but you've got 3 or 4 guys who are candidates to step into that role, that's the situation you want as a coach. Because then you're saying, okay, it's out there for you to get it. Somebody's got to go grab it and let the best player win.
You heard Jed Fish talk about this too, that Jacob Manu and Zadrius Rainey-Saleh are both out for this scrimmage, and who are your starting linebackers? X-Ray Alexander and Buda Alukta, which are the 2 guys they brought in from the portal last offseason to be their starting linebackers last year. It didn't quite work out that way coming into the season, but what Jed Fish say? Yeah, we had 2 starters out and we replaced them with 2 starters. So that's kind of the luxury you have at linebacker right now. And then, Donovan Robinson, second-year linebacker, 2025 signee, who was a safety in high school. They felt like once he got to college, he was a linebacker all the way. He's got decent size. He's retained his speed. He can really run. He was in coverage on a 19-yard touchdown pass that Damon Williams Jr. threw to Baron Naone. But also he had a breakup the day before. He had a couple pretty impressive tackles. Again, like that's a guy who, if all goes according to plan, there's really no reason to think that there's going to be room for him to play, aside from, if they happen to be up by multiple scores late in games. I mean, they just are that deep with veteran talent ahead of him, but who looks very good and looks like, in any other year, you'd be talking about, could Donovan Robinson be, their number 3 or number 4 linebacker? So, and guys, not everybody stays healthy, an injury or 2 there. And then now suddenly he's in a position where, you are going to end up relying on him. So, but Isaiah Tokyo, speaking of young linebackers, Isaiah Tokyo, he had a nice practice. JD Hill, they have him outside, signed him. He was a defensive lineman. There was some thought that he's versatile enough. Maybe down the road, he plays more on the interior. He's a powerful dude. I think he's pretty fast too, but saw him truck X-Ray Alexander during a special teams drill where it was like, whoa. And it's a freshman against a 4th-year player, but it's also man, I wouldn't want 6'2", 270 sprinting at me like that. That's a tough assignment for X-Ray Alexander.
For sure. And that guy's got nothing to lose.
Yeah. But again, that's another guy where it's okay, but is there room for him to play? He does look really good, but it might be, there are going to be a couple of freshmen on this team who you see this camp and go, wow, that guy looks like a really good player, who are going to have to go the more traditional route of there's no more redshirting, but there's enough depth where you're not going to have every single one of those guys on the field this year, at least not in, for significant snaps. But JD Hill's one who, maybe you're right. You're looking for those difference makers at edge rusher.
This will be my last sort of query of the day. Do you get any sense on returners? Desmond Roebuck, punt returner, kick returner. Do you get any sense of kind of what direction they're going in those spots?
Let me make absolutely sure, because it was the first thing I wrote down. It's the first thing they did. Trez Davis, Mason James, and Elijah Durr were returning kicks. I think I'll be a little surprised if it's not Rashawn Clark returning punts. Feels like it's mostly Rashawn Clark and Desmond Roebuck. who we usually see in drills there.
Did
I write that down on Saturday? Maybe not.
I've always enjoyed the idea of the defensive back returning punts, and maybe this can be traced back to Deion Sanders. I've always enjoyed the DB as the punt returner.
Yeah, who's
just
the
last aesthetics
DB?
of it.
Who's the last DB to return punts for the Huskies?
For the Huskies,
from Pettis to Aaron Fuller.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Feel like Trent McDuffie returned a punt at some point. We have seen
Rock Alexander definitely did, but that's 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's going back a ways. We have seen X-Ray Alexander back there.
I know.
Returning kickoffs.
He's got 2 kickoff returns. Not bad either.
I think you might actually see him return a kicker. Like, not like, oh, he's going to be the up guy and there's something weird's going to happen with, like, they legit might put him back there a time or two this year. I won't be shocked.
That'd be awesome.
So Trent McDuffie returned 6 punts in 2021.
Okay.
And he was their only punt returner in 2020.
So there's our answer.
Yeah.
COVID year and the year after that.
So I'm thinking at punt returner, it's mostly between Rashawn Clark and Desmond Roebuck. And we know that not a lot of thought is given to like reducing workload necessarily. So I typically think, well, like I would expect Desmond Roebuck to play more snaps. Although I don't know, like Rashawn Clark probably isn't coming off the field a lot either. Those are both, very much full-time players. So who do you think, who's more explosive? Who do you trust more? Who's going to achieve the goal of every punt return, which, as Chris Peterson described it, was get the ball back to the offense?
That is a Mike Holmgren-esque approach to the punt return, which is funny because then Chris Peterson had he was the most dangerous punt returner in college football history in Pettis. I get that. I'll be interested to see because I like the idea of the DB returning it, and until Rashawn Clark loses a ball, I would bet that he ends up getting the first hand, and if they come away with questions about ball security, then Roebuck goes back.
I don't know. I was just kind of default to wanting a running back returning kickoffs, and I don't really know why. Like someone else is better at it.
Well,
sure,
it's certainly it's a different skill than punt returner. Punt returner, basically you have to make someone miss. And it's more of quick feet, tight space maneuverability. And returning kickoffs, it takes a certain amount of courage and then knowing that you might get blown up at full speed because you've got a running start. So it definitely kickoffs much more conducive to running backs.
So the guys I saw returning punts on Saturday were Roebuck, Clark, Elijah Durr, Chris Lawson, and Mason James. Chris Lawson's another way. Hey, if he continues to show up at receiver, maybe that's one more way to kind of let him, try to get involved and make an impact on the game, is get him out there at punt returner. I feel like, have we seen Jaden Lamar during kickoff return drills? Or Quade Carr? I feel like that stands out in my brain for some reason, but I don't know if that's. By the way, this is what a scrimmage notebook looks like.
That's well done, man.
Easy.
That's way more organized, succinct. Mine, I've taken up 3 lines with one play. Like I was never that succinct.
This is when you see the dog mascot in the crowd, that's how you denote that.
Dubs!
And I forgot to write it. So I capital letters and circled it on the first page, and it still didn't make it into the story. So it's training camp for everybody. We're all just trying to get 1% better every day.
Get an early start on the week.
Yeah, thanks for doing this on a Monday, by the way.
It is my pleasure. I am happy to do it and look forward to checking in with you next week.
We owe it to the people. I got to get a 2-for-1 friends of the program Zoom call going here too, because I'm late on our July call by a couple of weeks now. So probably get a couple of those scheduled in the next couple of weeks here.
See you next week.
We'll talk to you then.